They say omegas are meant to submit. I learned otherwise the night I held a blade to an alpha king's throat and negotiated my own terms. The council chamber reeked of old wood and older prejudices. I stood before 7 alphas, who decided my fate over breakfast. My spine straight despite the weight of their stares. They expected tears. Begging, maybe. Instead, I was calculating which of them would break first under scrutiny. Kendra Osborne. My father's voice carried the particular disappointment he'd perfected over 23 years. You understand what we're offering? Offering. As if I had a choice. Alpha King Ryan Austin requires a companion, continued Elder Timothy Doyle, his jowls quivering with self-importance. Your condition makes you suitable. My condition. They meant the inability to shift that had marked me as defective since my first failed transformation at 13. The infertility that had broken my engagement to Scott Anderson 3 months prior. The worthlessness that made me expendable enough to send into a monster's castle. I'd learned to translate their euphemisms years ago. And what does the king offer in return? I asked. The elders exchanged glances. Omegas weren't supposed to negotiate. Your family's debt's forgiven, my father said quickly. Your sister Martha's upcoming bonding to the Anderson pack secured. Ah. There it was. Martha, the perfect Omega, fertile, beautiful, capable of shifting into a wolf so white she looked like moonlight given form. Martha, who'd consoled Scott so thoroughly after our broken engagement that they'd announced their mating within a week. The king is cursed, I said flatly. Everyone knows it. He's been trapped in beast form for 5 years, and every Omega sent to him has returned, changed, broken. Some haven't returned at all. Rumors. Elder Doyle snapped. Facts. I corrected. Omega Paige Cunningham lasted 3 weeks before she lost her mind. Omega Elsa Collins lasted 6 days. Shall I continue? My father's hand cracked across my face. I'd been expecting it had positioned myself to roll with the blow. The sting barely registered anymore. You will accept this honor with gratitude, he hissed. I touched my split lip. Tasted copper. I'll accept it with conditions. The chamber erupted. Alphas don't negotiate with defective Omegas. But I'd spent 23 years learning that the world's expectations were tools, not chains. They expected submission, so they never protected themselves against strategy. 1 year, I said into the chaos. My voice cut through their indignation like my words were claws. I serve 1 year as the king's companion. If I survive, my family's debts are forgiven. Martha's bonding is secured, and I receive 50 gold pieces and a letter of recommendation to the Royal Archives. Absurd. If I die, I continued, my family receives 100 gold pieces as compensation for their loss. Paid immediately, not in installments. The room fell silent. I'd made them see it. I wasn't a disposable Omega. I was a transaction. And transactions required terms. Elder Doyle's eyes narrowed. And if you refuse? Then you'll have to explain to the king why you couldn't secure even 1 Omega. I smiled, though it hurt my split lip. I hear he's been very specific about his requirements. An Omega who won't break, who can't bear children so there's no complications. Someone expendable enough that her loss won't start a war between packs. I'd done my research in the weeks since the council's first invitation. The king had rejected every Omega from prominent families, every fertile candidate who represented political alliances. He wanted someone who didn't matter. Lucky me. You have 1 hour to decide, I said. I'll be in the library. I walked out before they could respond. My hands steady even as my heart hammered against my ribs. The library was 3 corridors away, far enough that they couldn't immediately drag me back, close enough that I hadn't technically fled. I'd been preparing to leave anyway. The Royal Archives had been my secret dream since childhood, but defective Omegas didn't get to pursue dreams. They got married off to whoever would take them, had pups they were lucky to conceive, and faded into the background of pack life. Scott's rejection had been the final proof. I had no future here. The king's castle might be a death sentence, but at least it was a different death than slow suffocation in my father's house. The library door clicked shut behind me. I pressed my forehead against the cool wood, allowing myself exactly 30 seconds of fear. Then I straightened, crossed to the reference section, and pulled out the volume on ancient curses. If I was walking into a monster's lair, I'd do it armed with knowledge. The page on lycanthropic curses was dog-eared from my previous visits. Most curses required a trigger often related to the cursed individual's greatest flaw. Pride, rage, cruelty. The king's curse had manifested 5 years ago, immediately after his coronation. He'd transformed into a beast and never transformed back. What flaw could trap a king in animal form forever? Kendra. I didn't turn. Martha's reflection appeared in the window glass, her perfect features arranged in practiced concern. You don't have to do this, she said softly. Don't I? Father would find another way. Father gambled away 3 years of harvest profits and borrowed against next season's yield. I closed the book, still not facing her. The Anderson pack was willing to overlook our debts if I married Scott. But I can't have children, so that deal dissolved. Your bonding to Scott saves the family, but only if the existing debts are cleared first. Silence. Martha had never been good with numbers. Or consequences. I'm sorry, she whispered. About Scott. I didn't mean. You meant exactly what happened. I finally turned, meeting her eyes. You wanted him. You took him. That's what perfect Omegas do, they get what they want. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed, bitter and sharp. You're right, it's not fair. But I learned a long time ago that fairness is a luxury for Omegas who can shift. The door burst open. Elder Doyle, slightly winded. The council agrees to your terms. You leave at dawn. 12 hours. I'd bought myself 12 hours. I'll need traveling clothes, I said. And access to the restricted archives. If I'm facing a cursed king, I want to know what previous Omegas learned before they broke. Impossible. Then the deal is void. We stared at each other. He broke first. They always did. If you were willing to gamble everything. 4 hours in the archives. Supervised. Then you pack. I nodded. It would be enough. The restricted archives smelled like secrets, old paper, older magic, and the particular mustiness of knowledge deemed too dangerous for common access. I'd spent years bribing the archive assistant with hand-copied recipes and gossip to sneak glimpses of these shelves. Now I had official access, and I intended to use every minute. The journals of previous Omega companions were filed under failed diplomatic ventures. Diplomatic. As if being sacrificed to a monster was politics. Paige Cunningham's journal was mostly incoherent, frantic sketches of claws and teeth, repeated phrases about eyes in the dark. But 3 entries in, she'd written something useful. He doesn't speak, but he understands. I sang him the Omega lullaby my mother taught me, and he tilted his head like he was remembering something. Tomorrow I'll try the second verse. There was no tomorrow entry. Paige had been removed from the castle, screaming about shadows that ate dreams. Elsa Collins had lasted only 6 days, but she'd been methodical. Day 1. The beast is enormous, easily 8 feet tall. Built like a wolf but wrong. Too many teeth. Eyes that glow amber even in daylight. He watches me constantly but doesn't approach. Day 2. He left a tray of food outside my door. Better quality than I expected. Someone is maintaining this castle, but I've seen no servants. Day 3. I tried speaking to him. He growled and left. Note. Growls seem to be frustration, not aggression. Day 4. He brought books to my room while I slept. History texts, philosophy, poetry. How does he know I can read? Day 5. I caught him watching me read. When our eyes met, he looked away, almost. Ashamed? Day 6. I asked him why he was cursed. He destroyed the entire West Wing. I'm requesting immediate extraction. Interesting. The beast understood language, showed consideration, felt shame. These weren't the behaviors of a mindless monster. They were the behaviors of someone trapped. The final journal was from an Omega I didn't recognize, Alma Yoder. She'd lasted 2 months longer than anyone else. Week 1. I've decided to treat him like a person, because I think he is one. Underneath the fur and fangs, there's someone desperately lonely. Week 3. We've established a routine. I read aloud in the evenings. He listens from the shadows, never approaching, but I can feel his attention like a physical thing. Today I looked up and found him closer than usual. He fled immediately. Week 5. He left me a gift. A broken music box that plays half a melody. I've been trying to fix it. He watches my progress with intensity. Week 7. I told him about my family tonight. How they sold me to settle gambling debts. How I'd rather be here than there. He made a sound, not a growl. Almost like a whimper. When I looked up, he was gone. Week 8. I woke to find the music box fully repaired on my nightstand. He fixed it. For me. I think I'm beginning to understand the curse. The journal ended there. According to the archive notes, Alma had requested to stay, but her family had demanded her return for a more profitable bonding arrangement. She'd been dragged from the castle screaming, but not with fear, with fury. I closed the journal, pieces clicking into place. The king wasn't a monster who'd been cursed. He was a man who'd been cursed into becoming a monster, and every Omega sent to him had either broken under the isolation or begun to see his humanity, at which point they were removed before they could do whatever broke the curse. This wasn't a death sentence. It was a trap for both of us. The archive assistant cleared his throat. "Time's up, Miss Osborne." I gathered the journals, memorizing key passages. "I need paper and ink, and access to the music archives." "That's not." I negotiated archive access. I didn't specify which archives. He sighed but led me to the music collection. I found what I needed quickly. The complete Omega lullaby page had mentioned. Most Omegas only knew the first verse, a soft melody about moonlight and safety, but the original had 7 verses, each more complex than the last, telling the story of an Omega who'd tamed a wolf king with patience and song. Interesting choice of curse break, if that's what it was. I copied the lyrics quickly, my handwriting cramped but legible. The final verse made my breath catch. "And when the wolf king learned to see, beyond what eyes alone could show, he found that strength and tenderness were not opposing forces. No, the Omega who refused to kneel taught him that love means standing tall, and in that lesson, both were freed from pride and fear that bound them all." The Omega who refused to kneel. I folded the paper carefully and tucked it into my sleeve. Dawn came too quickly. I stood in the courtyard with a single pack of belongings, practical clothes, the copied songs, and 3 books I'd borrowed without asking. My family watched from the doorway. Martha was crying. My father looked relieved. The carriage was black lacquer and old magic. No driver visible, but the horses stamped impatiently, breath misting in the cold air. "Last chance to reconsider," Elder Doyle said, though his tone suggested he hoped I wouldn't. I climbed into the carriage without responding. The door shut itself. The horses began moving without command. As we rolled through the gates, I didn't look back. I'd spent 23 years in that house, and I'd learned everything it had to teach me: how to make myself small, how to hide intelligence behind submission, how to survive in spaces that saw me as defective. The king's castle would be different, worse probably, but at least it would be mine to navigate. I pulled out the song lyrics and began to memorize the verses. If I was going to tame a monster or free a man, I'd do it on my own terms. The Omega who refused to kneel. I smiled, tasting blood again from my split lip. Perfect. Chapter 2. The Dark Castle hides a broken king. The journey took 3 days, though time felt strange inside the enchanted carriage. No stops for food or rest. Provisions appeared on the velvet seat beside me each morning, and exhaustion pulled me into sleep each night despite my determination to stay alert. Magic, clearly, though I'd never experienced anything this sophisticated. I used the time productively. Memorized all 7 verses of the lullaby. Reviewed everything I'd learned about curses and their breaking conditions. Planned opening strategies for meeting the Beast King, ranking them by likelihood of survival. On the 3rd afternoon, the castle appeared. It wasn't what I expected. The rumors had painted it as a Gothic nightmare, all crumbling towers and darkness. But the structure rising from the mist was hauntingly beautiful. White stone that caught the fading sunlight, towers that seemed to grow organically from the mountain itself, gardens that had once been magnificent, now wild with overgrowth. A castle that had been loved, then abandoned to loneliness. The carriage stopped at the main entrance. The door opened itself. I stepped out, my boots crunching on gravel that hadn't seen maintenance in years. The horses vanished the moment my belongings touched the ground. There 1 second, gone the next, leaving only dissipating mist. No going back now. Not that I'd wanted to. The castle doors were massive oak reinforced with iron, standing slightly ajar, an invitation or a warning. I picked up my pack and walked through. The entrance hall stole my breath. Vaulted ceilings painted with constellations. A grand staircase splitting into 2 curves. Floors of polished marble reflecting the light from windows 3 stories tall. Dust motes danced in the afternoon sun, and everything was covered in a thin layer of neglect, but the bones of beauty remained. And everywhere were the marks of claws. Gouges in the walls, shredded tapestries, furniture overturned and splintered. Evidence of rage, or perhaps despair. "Hello?" My voice echoed too loud in the silence. A growl answered from somewhere above. low, resonant, carrying a clear message, I know you're here. I set down my pack and pulled out the first item I'd brought specifically for this moment, a small silver bell I'd stolen from the chapel. I rang it once, clear and bright. My name is Kendra Osborne, I called. I'm the Omega sent by the council. I negotiated a 1-year contract, which means neither of us can kill the other without violating the terms. So we might as well establish some ground rules. Silence. Then the scrape of claws on stone, moving away. Rule 1. I continued, walking toward the staircase. I will not cower in whatever room you assign me. I'm here for a year, and I refuse to spend it as a prisoner. I'll explore this castle, and you'll tolerate it. A door slammed somewhere on the 2nd floor. Definitely listening then. Rule 2. I read constantly, so I'll need access to your library. I saw one through the window's east wing, 3rd floor. Don't bother denying it exists. I started climbing the stairs, my hand trailing along the banister. The wood was smooth under my fingers, well crafted. Someone had built this castle with care. Rule 3. I cook my own meals. I've read what happened to Omega Elsa when she refused food she thought was poisoned. I'm not that paranoid, but I am practical. Show me the kitchen, and I'll manage. 2nd floor landing. More claw marks, but also something else, scratches that looked almost like writing, as if he'd tried to form letters with his claws and failed. My chest tightened unexpectedly. Rule 4. My voice caught. I cleared my throat. Rule 4. You don't have to hide from me. I've seen the journals. I know you understand language. I know you're not mindless. So let's skip the part where you lurk in shadows trying to terrify me, and I pretend to be terrified. We're both smarter than that. A door at the end of the corridor opened slowly. Not an invitation, but not a refusal either. I walked toward it, my pulse hammering but my steps steady. The room beyond was a disaster, furniture destroyed, curtains shredded, a massive 4-poster bed that had been clawed to pieces. But also, books stacked carefully in the corner, a writing desk with ink and paper, and windows that overlooked the gardens. He'd given me the room with the best view. Thank you, I said to the empty air. A huff from the shadows near the ceiling. I looked up and saw amber eyes reflecting the dying sunlight. He was perched impossibly on the rafters, his form massive and dark against the wood. I caught an impression of fur and muscle, fangs too long for any natural wolf. And something deeply wrong about his proportions, as if he'd been stretched and twisted into this shape. Our eyes met. He didn't look away this time. You're bigger than I expected, I said conversationally, setting my pack on the least damaged chair. The journals mentioned 8 feet. You're closer to 9, I'd estimate. Must make navigating doorways interesting, he growled. But it sounded more confused than threatening. I'm going to unpack now. You can watch if you want, or leave. Either way, I'll be down to explore the kitchen in an hour. If you want to join me, feel free. If not, leave me some indication of where food is stored so I don't accidentally poison us both with spoiled provisions. I turned my back on him, calculated risk, and began removing items from my pack. Clothes, books, the copied songs, a few personal items I'd smuggled out, the silver bell, which I placed prominently on the writing desk. Behind me, claws scraped stone. Then silence. When I glanced back, the rafters were empty. I released a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. The kitchen was in surprisingly good condition. Clean, well-stocked, with dried herbs hanging from the rafters and a pantry that suggested someone or something had been maintaining basic supplies. Fresh vegetables in spelled containers that kept them from spoiling. Flour, salt, sugar, even eggs, though I had no idea where they came from. I found bread ingredients and started working. Kneading dough had always helped me think, and I had a lot to process. The beast was watching me. I couldn't see him, but I felt his attention like heat on my skin. Somewhere in the shadows of the cavernous kitchen, amber eyes tracked my movements. The journal said you leave food for your guests, I said, shaping the dough. But they never mentioned you eating, do you? Eat, I mean. Or is that part of the curse, trapped in a form that needs sustenance you can't properly consume? No answer, but the quality of the silence changed. Attentive rather than wary. Omega Alma wrote that you fixed her music box. That requires fine motor control, which means your claws aren't just weapons. They're tools. I set the dough in a bowl to rise and started chopping vegetables for soup. She also wrote that you responded to her emotions, whimpered when she talked about her pain. That's empathy, which means you're still in there, not just beast. not just curse. You. A low rumble from the shadows, not quite a growl, almost like frustrated agreement. The curse must have conditions, I continued, my knife creating a steady rhythm against the cutting board. Curses always do. Something you have to learn, or realize, or achieve. But 5 years is a long time to be trapped like this. Either the condition is incredibly specific, or, I paused, considering, or every Omega sent here got close to breaking it, so they were removed before they could succeed. The rumble grew louder. Definitely agreement now, edged with anger, which means the council doesn't want the curse broken. I swept the vegetables into a pot. Interesting. Why would they want their king to remain a beast? Unless. The pieces clicked together. Unless you're more useful this way. A cursed king can't rule. Which means the council maintains control. They send Omegas periodically to maintain the appearance of trying to help. But they make sure those Omegas are either too fragile to survive, or too valuable to risk losing. I turned, searching the shadows. But I'm neither fragile nor valuable. I'm expendable, which means I'm dangerous. They didn't think that through. For a long moment. Nothing. Then he emerged from the shadows. The journals hadn't prepared me. Nothing could have. He was massive, easily 9 feet of muscle and fur and wrongness. His body was wolf-like but stretched, forced into a more upright position that looked painful. His front legs ended in paws that were almost hands. Fingers tipped with claws as long as daggers. His face was the worst, a wolf's muzzle filled with too many teeth, but his eyes were devastatingly human. Amber and exhausted, and intelligent, and desperate. I didn't scream. Didn't step back. I'd promised myself I wouldn't give him fear. "Hello, Alpha King Ryan Austin," I said quietly. He flinched at his name, as if he'd forgotten anyone remembered he had one. "I'm going to finish making dinner," I continued, turning back to the stove with affected casualness even though my hands wanted to shake. "You're welcome to stay. I find conversations easier when I'm doing something with my hands. Occupies the nervous energy." I heard him move surprisingly quiet for something so large. When I glanced over, he'd settled near the fireplace, far enough to not be threatening but close enough to observe. His posture was careful, calculated to take up as little space as possible despite his size. He was trying not to scare me. My chest ached unexpectedly. "The council gave me 1 year," I said, stirring the soup. "But they also gave me terms. I negotiated for gold, and a recommendation to the Royal Archives when I'm done. They agreed quickly, too quickly. Which means they expect me to fail, probably because they expect you to kill me or drive me mad like the others." His ears flattened. He made a sound like a whine. "I'm not planning to fail," I said firmly. "And I don't think you're planning to kill me. So we have a year to figure out your curse and break it. And I have a year to prove to the council that defective Omegas can be just as dangerous as perfect ones when you underestimate us." I ladled soup into 2 bowls, set them on the rough wooden table. "The question is whether you want your curse broken. 5 years is a long time. Maybe you've gotten used to this. Maybe the man you were before isn't someone you want to be again." I met his eyes directly. "So before we go any further, do you want to be saved?" The silence stretched. He stared at me with those devastating human eyes trapped in a monster's face. Then, slowly, deliberately, he nodded. Once, clear, unmistakable. "Good," I said. "Then let's start with dinner. I made enough for both of us, though I'm not sure how you." I gestured vaguely at his muzzle. He huffed definitely amusement and approached the table. With surprising delicacy, he picked up the bowl in his clawed hands and drank directly, his movements careful to avoid spilling. I sat across from him and ate my own soup, the situation so absurd I almost laughed. Here I was, a defective Omega having dinner with a cursed beast king in an enchanted castle, plotting to undermine a council that thought I was disposable. "I brought something," I said after we'd both finished. I pulled the folded paper from my pocket. "It's a song. 7 verses. The Omega Lullaby, complete version. Most people only know the first verse, but I found the rest in the music archives." His entire body went still. The last verse mentions an Omega who refused to kneel. I unfolded the paper, smoothing it on the table between us. It talks about teaching a wolf king that strength and tenderness aren't opposing forces. That love means standing tall, and that this lesson freed them both. I looked up. His eyes were fixed on the paper with an intensity that made my breath catch. "I don't know if this song is connected to your curse," I said, But Omega Page tried singing the first verse, and you responded. So tomorrow night, if you're willing, I'd like to try singing all 7 verses. See what happens." He nodded immediately, then stood. For a terrifying moment, I thought I'd made a mistake. But he simply moved to the kitchen entrance, paused, and looked back at me with something like gratitude in his amber eyes. Then he was gone, leaving me alone with the dirty dishes and the weight of what I'd just committed to. I cleaned up slowly, my mind racing. The curse had conditions. The song might be key. The council was actively working against any solution. And I had 1 year to navigate all of it while keeping myself intact. The Omega who refused to kneel. I touched the paper, reading the final verse again. Whatever this curse was, it was about more than just breaking a spell. It was about transformation for both of us. I just had to figure out how to survive it. That night, I lay in the destroyed bed I'd partially repaired with spare linens, staring at the ceiling. The castle creaked and settled around me, old magic humming in its bones. Somewhere in the darkness, the Beast King prowled his prison. I thought about his eyes, about the careful way he'd moved to avoid scaring me, about how he'd nodded when I asked if he wanted to be saved. 5 years trapped in a monster's body, while a council that should have served him instead used his curse to consolidate power. 5 years of Omegas sent and removed just as they started to connect with him. 5 years of isolation and hope deferred. No wonder the castle bore marks of rage. But also, the repaired music box, the carefully stocked kitchen, the room with the best view. He hadn't stopped being a person. He'd just stopped expecting anyone to notice. Tomorrow, I'd sing him the song. We'd see if it triggered anything, revealed any clues about the curse's conditions. And if it didn't work, we'd try something else. I had a year, and nothing to lose except a life I hadn't wanted anyway. The Omega who refused to kneel. I smiled in the darkness, and let sleep take me. Chapter 3. The first verse. I woke to sunlight streaming through the repaired sections of curtain, and the smell of fresh bread. For a disoriented moment, I thought I'd dreamed the previous day. Then I saw the claw marks on the walls, the destroyed furniture I'd shoved into the corner, and the loaf of bread sitting on the writing desk with a small pot of honey beside it. He'd brought me breakfast while I slept. I dressed quickly in practical clothes, trousers, and a tunic I'd modified from my brother's old things and braided my hair back. The bread was still warm when I tore off a piece, better than anything I'd eaten at home, with a complexity of flavor that suggested someone who actually understood baking. Did he bake this himself? With those massive clawed hands? The image was so incongruous I almost laughed. I ate standing by the window, looking out over the wild gardens. In daylight, I could see paths beneath the overgrowth, structures that had once been fountains or sculptures now claimed by ivy and moss, beautiful in its abandonment, like the castle itself. A flicker of movement caught my eye. There, near the far wall, a massive dark shape moving through the shadows of overgrown hedges. Patrolling, or perhaps just restless. I finished eating and went to find him. The library was exactly where I'd spotted it from outside. East wing, 3rd floor, double doors carved with intricate patterns of wolves and moons. I pushed them open and stopped. The space was enormous, 3 stories of books spiraling upward, connected by narrow staircases and balconies, with a domed glass ceiling that filled everything with natural light. Comfortable chairs clustered near reading lamps, desks with inkwells and paper, and books, thousands of books on everything from history to philosophy to what looked like advanced magic theory. This was a scholar's paradise. "Oh," I breathed. A huff from above. I looked up to see him perched on the 3rd floor balcony, watching me. His posture was tense, as if bracing for disappointment. "This is incredible," I said, moving to the nearest shelf. "History of the Northern Territories. How long did it take to collect all these?" He made a sound almost like a pleased rumble. I ran my fingers along the spines, reading titles. My father thought books were wasteful for Omegas, said we should focus on practical skills like cooking and child rearing. I pulled out a volume on ancient pack structures. I learned to read by bribing the pack tutor with stolen sweets. Spent every free moment in our small library, copying texts by hand because I wasn't allowed to borrow them. I looked up at him. This must have been wonderful. Before the curse. His ears drooped. He turned away. "I'm going to spend today reading about curses," I said, moving to a desk, looking for patterns, conditions, breaking mechanisms. "If you have books specifically about transformation curses or bindings that affect speech, those would be helpful." He disappeared from the balcony. I heard movement above claws on wood. The scrape of books being moved. Then he reappeared and dropped 3 volumes onto the balcony railing. They tumbled down, and I caught them with reflexes honed from years of catching things my father threw. Curses of transformation and binding, the silent affliction, magical speech impediments, and breaking what shouldn't be broken. A practical guide. Perfect, I said. Thank you. He settled on the balcony, watching me with those intelligent amber eyes. I opened the first book and began to read. Hours passed. The sun tracked across the sky, light shifting through the domed ceiling. I took notes, cross-referenced entries, and built a mental framework of how curses functioned. The basics were consistent across sources. Curses required a trigger, usually the victim's greatest flaw or fear, a manifestation, the physical or magical punishment, and a condition, the specific requirement, for breaking it. The condition always related thematically to the trigger. A vain person might need to perform an act of genuine selflessness. A cruel person might need to receive unearned mercy. But speech-binding curses were unusual. They typically only appeared as secondary effects, symptoms of a deeper magical working, which meant Ryan's inability to speak wasn't the curse itself, it was a side effect of whatever had transformed him. The trigger, I said aloud, still reading. It happened at your coronation. What went wrong that day? Silence from above. When I looked up, he was gone. I said, sensitive subject, clearly. I returned to reading, but my mind wandered. Coronations were symbolic, the moment when power transferred, when a new leader took responsibility for their people. What could trigger a transformation curse at that specific moment? The Wolf King learned to see beyond what eyes alone could show. The song verse echoed in my memory. Seeing beyond surface appearances, looking deeper than the obvious. What had Ryan failed to see? Evening arrived. I'd made progress through 2 of the 3 books and had a working theory about the curse structure, though not its specific condition. My eyes ached from reading in dimming light, and my stomach reminded me I'd skipped lunch entirely. I found Ryan in the kitchen, near the fireplace where he'd settled the previous night. He watched me enter with careful attention. I think I understand the framework, I said, pulling out vegetables for dinner. Your curse is a transformation binding with a speech impediment component. The transformation forces you into beast form, not just appearance but actual physical restructuring. The speech binding prevents you from explaining the curse condition to anyone, which means you have to wait for someone to figure it out, independently. He nodded, his relief visible. The condition relates to your trigger, something that happened at your coronation, something you failed to see or understand or acknowledge. I chopped carrots with quick precision, and I'm guessing multiple omegas got close to the answer, which is why the council removed them before they could complete whatever action breaks it. Another nod, more emphatic. So tonight we try the song. I looked at him directly. If it's connected to the curse, your reaction will tell us. If it's not, we move on to other approaches. Either way, we learn something. I cooked while he watched, a simple stew this time, with herbs from the kitchen garden I'd spotted earlier. We ate together at the rough table, the domesticity of it strange and comfortable at once. Afterward, I retrieved the song lyrics from my room, and returned to find him waiting in the library. He'd lit lamps throughout the space, creating pools of warm light in the growing darkness. Where do you want me? I asked. He gestured with one clawed hand toward a comfortable chair near the fireplace. Then he settled on the floor nearby, close enough to hear clearly but far enough to not crowd me. I sat, the paper trembling slightly in my hands. I should mention, I'm not a particularly good singer, adequate, but not talented. So if this sounds rough, that's my limitation, not the songs. He huffed, definitely amusement. I took a breath and began. The first verse was familiar, the one most Omegas knew. A simple melody about moonlight and safety, meant to soothe Omega children to sleep. My voice was thin at first, uncertain, but it grew stronger as muscle memory took over. When moonlight paints the forest silver, and wolves run wild and free, the Omega child sleeps soundly, protected, loved, and seen. Ryan's ears pricked forward. He leaned closer, his amber eyes fixed on my face. The second verse shifted the melody slightly, adding complexity. But there are wolves who've lost their way, who cannot find their home, who wear their strength like armor, and face the dark alone. His entire body tensed. A low whine escaped him. I continued, my voice gaining confidence as I watched his reactions. The Omega knows the truth they hide. Behind their walls of pride, that strength without connection leaves only hollow inside. He stood abruptly, pacing. Not threatening, agitated, emotional, I kept singing. The fourth verse was where the story truly began. So Omega sang to Wolf King, a song of truth and pain, of walls we build to hide ourselves, and what we lose and gain. Ryan stopped pacing. His breathing had changed faster, almost labored. The Wolf King heard the Omega's song, and felt his armor crack, for in that voice was understanding. Of all the things he lacked, a sound tore from him, not quite a howl, but close, raw, and desperate, and filled with recognition. I sang the sixth verse, tears pricking my eyes at his reaction. He'd ruled with strength and distance, with walls too high to breach. He'd never let another close, never asked, never reached. Ryan collapsed to his knees, all four legs folding, his massive head bowed. His shoulders shook. The final verse came out as barely more than a whisper. And when the Wolf King learned to see, beyond what eyes alone could show, he found that strength and tenderness were not opposing forces. No, the Omega who refused to kneel taught him that love means standing tall, and in that lesson both were freed from pride and fear that bound them all. Silence, heavy and profound. Then Ryan lifted his head, and I saw wetness on his fur. Tears. The beast was crying. I set down the paper and slowly, carefully, moved to kneel beside him. Not submission, proximity. My hand hovered over his shoulder. "May I?" I asked quietly. He nodded. I touched his fur. It was coarse and thick, but warm. Alive. Beneath it, I felt him trembling. "The trigger," I said softly, "was about isolation, wasn't it? You ruled alone, kept everyone at a distance, built walls so high that no one could reach you." He nodded against my hand. "And at your coronation, someone pointed this out? Or the magic itself recognized it?" Another nod. "So, the curse forces you into a form that makes isolation inevitable, a beast that scares everyone away. And the condition." I thought about the song's message. The condition requires you to let someone close, to show vulnerability, to accept help instead of maintaining perfect independence. He pulled back slightly, meeting my eyes. Then he deliberately lifted one massive paw and placed it over my hand. Gentle despite the claws. A gesture of trust. My breath caught. "But the council removes Omegas before you can complete that connection. Before the curse recognizes you've met the condition." His eyes blazed with fury and agreement. "How long do we have?" I asked. "Before they decide I've been here long enough and try to remove me?" He held up his paw, claws extended. 5 months? He shook his head, made a gesture like the sun rising and setting. 5 weeks. My stomach dropped. "That's not much time." He lowered his paw, looking defeated. "But I'd negotiated a year. The council had agreed to a year, which meant either they planned to break the contract, which would cost them politically, or they had another way to end this before 5 weeks passed. They'll try to make me leave willingly," I realized. "Or make me break the contract terms. Give me a reason to request extraction." Ryan's ears flattened. He knew. "Then we have 5 weeks to break your curse and dismantle their scheme." I stood, helping him up absurd, given his size, but he let me. "Tomorrow, we start working on the condition, building genuine connection, teaching you that vulnerability isn't weakness." I smiled, fierce and determined. "And I'll teach you what I learned from being called defective my entire life. Sometimes the things others see as weaknesses are actually our greatest strengths." He made a sound, part growl, part purr, that might have been agreement. "But right now, you should rest. Emotional breakthroughs are exhausting." I touched his shoulder again, marveling at how natural the gesture felt. "Thank you for trusting me with your tears. That was brave." He ducked his head, almost shy. Then he turned and padded toward the door, pausing to look back. "Good night, Ryan," I said. He huffed softly, definitely pleased, and disappeared into the shadows. I stood in the library for a long moment, processing what had just happened. The song had worked, not to break the curse outright, but to confirm its nature. Ryan's isolation had triggered his transformation, and breaking it required genuine connection, something the council had systematically prevented for 5 years. But I wasn't like the other Omegas they'd sent. I was defective, expendable, and underestimated, which meant I was dangerous in ways they hadn't anticipated. The Omega who refused to kneel. I gathered my notes and headed to bed, already planning tomorrow's approach. We had 5 weeks. It would be enough. It had to be. Chapter 4. The Strategy Game. I woke to find a chess set on my writing desk. The pieces were exquisite, carved from dark and light wood, each one detailed enough to show individual features. The kings wore tiny crowns. The queens held miniature scepters. The knights were wolves mid-leap, captured in eternal motion. A note rested beside the board, written in careful block letters. You said you use your intelligence as a weapon. Show me. I smiled. So the Beast King wanted to play. I found him in the library, sprawled across the 3rd-floor balcony with a book open beneath his massive paws. He looked up when I entered, carrying the chess set. Accepting your challenge, I said, climbing the spiral stairs. Though I should warn you, I'm better at chess than I am at singing. He huffed and carefully closed his book with one claw, marking his place. Then he moved to give me space on the balcony. I set up the board between us. Standard rules? Or do cursed beast kings play by different conventions? His ears twitched. Amusement. He gestured for me to choose my color. I took black, the defensive position, and moved my pieces into starting formation. He studied the board with intense focus, then moved a white pawn forward. Classical opening. Cautious. My father taught me chess when I was 7, I said, countering with my own pawn. He thought it would make me a better strategic thinker for managing a household. Instead, I used it to beat him so consistently that he stopped playing with me. Ryan moved his knight. A probe, testing my defenses. I responded by developing my bishop. He called it unnatural. Said Omegas shouldn't be competitive, shouldn't seek to win. We should be accommodating, nurturing. I captured his advanced pawn. He never understood that strategy and nurturing aren't opposites. You can't protect what you don't understand. You can't nurture what you won't fight for. Ryan paused, studying me rather than the board. Then he moved his queen into an aggressive position. Not his best play tactically, but a clear statement. I'm listening. The council thinks I'm passive, I continued, castling my king to safety. They looked at a defective Omega who couldn't shift, who got rejected by her mate, who agreed to their terms without fighting. They saw exactly what they expected to see. I met his amber eyes. They didn't look deeper. Didn't notice I negotiated terms they never offer. Didn't question why I wanted access to the archives. Didn't wonder what I might do with a year of time and motivation. Ryan made a sound approving, impressed. He moved his rook, but I could tell his attention was more on my words than the game. That's what your curse is about, isn't it? I captured his queen with my knight, a sacrifice play he should have seen coming. Looking beyond surface appearances. Seeing what's actually there, not what you expect to see. He growled, frustrated with himself for missing the trap. But he didn't seem angry, more like he appreciated the lesson. We played in comfortable silence for several moves. Ryan was good, better than good. He thought 3 moves ahead, recognized patterns, adapted his strategy based on my playstyle. But he had a tell. His ears flattened slightly when he was uncertain about a choice. I exploited it ruthlessly. Check, I said, moving my bishop. He studied the board, then deliberately tipped his king over, conceding. You let me win, I accused. He shook his head and gestured at the board at the position I'd maneuvered him into over the last 10 moves. It was elegant, efficient, and inevitable. He'd lost legitimately. He was just acknowledging it faster than dragging it out. Another game? I asked. He nodded immediately. We reset the pieces. This time he chose black, and his playing style shifted more aggressive, testing my ability to defend. Tell me about before, I said as we played. Before the curse. What were you like? He paused, then moved a piece almost angrily. That bad? I captured his pawn. Or that different from who you are now? He made a gesture, claws spreading wide, then contracting that somehow conveyed distant, closed off, unreachable. The song said you ruled with walls too high to breach, I said softly. Why? For a long moment, he didn't move. Then, carefully, he used one claw to scratch letters into the dusty floor beside the board. Safer. My chest ached. Safer for you, or safer for others? He wrote. Both. Alphas are supposed to be strong, I said, understanding. Unshakable. Perfect leaders who never need help, never show weakness, never let anyone see the cracks. He nodded, looking miserable. My father used to say something similar about Omegas. We're supposed to be soft, accommodating. Perfect nurturers who never question, never want more, never let anyone see our ambitions. I moved my queen decisively. Checkmate. He looked at the board, surprised. Then he huffed, definitely respect, and tipped his king. Both of us trapped by expectations. I said, you couldn't show vulnerability, because alphas must be strong. I couldn't show strength because omegas must be gentle. And both of us ended up isolated because of it. Ryan met my eyes, and I saw recognition there. Understanding, we were mirrors of each other, two people crushed by different sides of the same coin. Want to know what I think? I started resetting the pieces. I think the curse isn't punishment, it's a teacher, forcing you to need help, forcing you to be vulnerable, showing you that connection doesn't make you weak, it makes you whole. He was very still, processing, and I think breaking it requires you to genuinely accept that lesson. Not just intellectually understand it, but feel it, believe it. I positioned the final piece, which means we need to build real trust between us, not just strategy or negotiation, but actual friendship. I looked up at him. Are you willing to try that? Knowing it means showing me parts of yourself you've probably never shown anyone? For a long moment he stared at me with those devastating amber eyes. Then, slowly, he extended one massive paw and placed it over my hand on the board. His claws were careful, his touch gentle. Yes. He was willing. Good, I said, squeezing his paw carefully. Then let's start with this. Every day, we play chess. And during each game, you tell me one true thing about yourself. Something real. It doesn't have to be big, just honest. He nodded, then carefully pulled his paw back and scratched in the dust. You too. Fair, I agreed. One truth for one truth. Deal? He touched his paw to mine again. Sealed. We played 4 more games that day. I won 3. He won 1 through a brilliant mid-game gambit I hadn't seen coming. During the second game, he wrote, I liked gardening. Before. I looked out the library windows at the wild, overgrown gardens. You built those? He nodded. They're beautiful, I said honestly. Even abandoned. Maybe especially abandoned, there's something about beauty that survives neglect, that feels more real than maintained perfection. His ears perked up, pleased. During the third game, I told him I wanted to be a scholar, study history and language and magic theory. But my father said it was wasteful, that I should focus on being a good mate and mother. I moved my rook. When I couldn't have children, I thought maybe I'd finally get to pursue it. Instead, I just became more worthless to him. Ryan growled, not at me, but at the idea. He wrote, not worthless. I know that now, I said. Took me a long time to learn it though. During the 4th game, he scratched. Parents died when I was 12. Raised by council. That's why they have so much power, I realized. You were king in name, but they controlled everything while you were young. He nodded grimly. And when you turned 21 and took actual control, at your coronation, I thought about the curse timing. They lost their power. Unless you were cursed. His eyes blazed. Yes. The pieces clicked into place. The council engineered this. Not the curse itself necessarily, that might have been genuine magic responding to your emotional isolation. But they've been maintaining it deliberately. Sending omegas they know will fail. Removing the ones who might succeed. Keeping you trapped so they can rule in your place. Ryan's claws gouged into the wooden floor, his rage barely contained. We need proof, I said. If we break your curse but can't prove they sabotaged the solution, they'll just claim credit for finally finding the right omega. They'll maintain their political power. He looked at me sharply. Surprised I was thinking that far ahead. I'm defective, not stupid, I said dryly. Breaking your curse solves your problem. Exposing their conspiracy solves mine. I need leverage, if I'm going to get my recommendation to the royal archives. And I need them discredited, if they're going to take me seriously as anything other than a disposable omega. Ryan made a sound, definitely approval, and gestured at the board, his move. I studied the position, then smiled and captured his queen. Check. He huffed. Conceded, then wrote. Teach me to be ruthless like you. You don't need to be ruthless, I said. You need to be strategic. There's a difference. Ruthless is cutting down anything in your way. Strategic is finding the path where nothing needs cutting because you've already moved the pieces exactly where you need them. I reset the board. One more game before dinner? He nodded eagerly. That evening, I cooked while he watched from his usual spot near the fireplace. We'd fallen into an easy rhythm, me working with my hands while we communicated in other ways. Sometimes he'd scratch words in the dust or ash. Sometimes I'd read his body language. Sometimes we just existed in comfortable silence. "Can I ask something personal?" I said, stirring the pot. He tilted his head. "Go ahead. Do you hate being a beast, or just hate being isolated?" He considered this carefully, then wrote, "Both, but more the second. Because even in this form, you could connect with people, if they weren't afraid." "Yes, and the council sends omegas who are either too fragile to handle the fear, or too pragmatic to look past it." He nodded. "What about me?" I asked. "Are you surprised I'm not afraid?" He wrote, "Surprised you saw me. The man under the monster?" "Yes. I came to sit beside him on the floor, bowls of stew in hand. You made it easy. The repaired music box for Alma. The breakfast bread for me. The chess set. You keep showing people who you are. They just weren't looking." I handed him his bowl. "But I've spent my whole life being invisible despite standing right in front of people. So I learned to look deeper, to see what's actually there." We ate together, and I felt something shift between us. Not attraction, not yet, maybe not ever in the traditional sense, but genuine friendship, trust, the beginnings of the connection his curse required. "Tomorrow," I said, "I want to try something. Will you show me the gardens? Teach me what you were growing?" His entire body language brightened. He nodded enthusiastically. "And maybe we can start clearing some of the overgrowth. Work on it together." I smiled. Seems metaphorically appropriate, tending to something beautiful that's been neglected, helping it grow again. He touched my shoulder gently with one paw. "Thank you." "For what?" "Seeing. Staying. Trying." "You're welcome," I said softly. "Though honestly, you're giving me as much as I'm giving you. Maybe more." He tilted his head, confused. "A place where my defects don't matter, where my intelligence is valued, where I can be myself without apology." I met his amber eyes. "That's worth more than gold or recommendations or anything the council offered me." For a long moment we just looked at each other, defective Omega and cursed King, two broken pieces that somehow fit together. Then Ryan did something unexpected. He lowered his massive head and rested it gently against my shoulder. Not aggressive, not threatening, just contact, connection, trust. I lifted my hand slowly and rested it on his head, scratching carefully behind his ears. He made a sound I'd never heard before. A deep, resonant purr that vibrated through his whole body. "We're going to break this curse," I told him. "And then we're going to make the council regret underestimating both of us." His purr deepened. Agreement and anticipation. We stayed like that for a long time. Two souls finding comfort in unexpected places. While outside the library windows, the first stars appeared over the wild gardens we'd tend together tomorrow. Chapter 5. The Garden of Trust. Dawn brought rain, soft and persistent, turning the wild gardens into a watercolor painting of greens and grays. I stood at my window watching water drip from overgrown roses, wondering if Ryan would still want to work outside in this weather. A scratch at my door answered that question. I opened it to find him standing in the hallway, somehow managing to look both massive and uncertain. He'd brought me something, a heavy cloak, made of oiled leather that would shed rain, and sturdy boots that looked about my size. "You planned this," I said, taking the offerings. "Were these here already, or did you magic them into existence overnight?" He huffed and made a gesture that suggested the castle had certain provisions, enchantments that provided what was needed. Convenient. I pulled on the boots, perfect fit, and swung the cloak around my shoulders. "Lead the way then." We descended through the castle, Ryan moving with surprising grace despite his size. He knew every corridor, every shortcut, navigating the space with the familiarity of someone who'd spent 5 years memorizing his prison. The garden entrance was through the kitchen, out a heavy wooden door that opened onto a stone terrace. The rain intensified the smell of earth and growing things, and I breathed it in deeply. "Where do we start?" I asked. Ryan moved down the terrace steps and along a path barely visible beneath encroaching vines. I followed, ducking under branches and stepping over roots that had broken through ancient paving stones. He led me to what had once been a rose garden. Even in its wild state, I could see the original design, concentric circles of different varieties, arranged by color and bloom time. But 5 years of neglect had turned it into a thorny maze, roses growing into each other, choking themselves with their own abundance. Ryan sat back on his haunches and gestured at the chaos with something like despair. It's not ruined, I said, assessing the situation. Just overgrown. We can bring it back. It'll just take time and patience. He wrote in the wet earth with one claw. Like me. Exactly like you. I knelt beside a particularly tangled section. Beauty that's been neglected but not destroyed. Still alive underneath. Still capable of blooming. I started carefully separating the intertwined branches, using techniques I'd learned from tending my mother's small herb garden before she died. Ryan watched intently, then began helping with surprising delicacy, his claws so deadly looking, proving perfect tools for precision work. We worked in silence for a while, the rain a steady percussion against leaves. There was something meditative about it, the careful untangling, the gradual revelation of original structure, the teamwork required to manage what one person couldn't handle alone. Tell me about when you planted these, I said eventually. Ryan paused, then slowly wrote. Year before curse. Wanted something beautiful. Something alive. You were already isolating yourself, I realized. Pulling away from people, finding comfort in things that couldn't hurt you. He nodded sadly. Plants are safe, I said, understanding. They need you, but they don't judge you. Don't have expectations, don't require emotional vulnerability. Just water and sunlight and time. Yes. But they also don't feel the loneliness, do they? They're beautiful, but they can't talk back. Can't understand you. Can't challenge you to be better. I gently freed a white rose from the tangle, its petals still pristine despite the chaos. You need both. Beauty and connection. Gardens and people. Ryan made a sound, half agreement, half frustration. He wrote, people complicated, people hurt. People do hurt, I agreed, moving to the next section. My father hurt me every time he looked at me with disappointment. Scott hurt me when he chose Martha. The council hurt you by using your curse for political power. I sat back on my heels, looking at him directly. But people also heal. They surprise you. They see things you can't see in yourself. They make you laugh when you thought you'd forgotten how. I smiled. They play chess with you and lose gracefully. They work in the rain with you untangling roses, even though there are 1,000 easier ways to spend a morning. His ears perked forward, his amber eyes intense on my face. The curse is teaching you that vulnerability is worth the risk, I said softly. That connection, real connection, is worth the potential for pain. He held my gaze for a long moment, then deliberately reached out and placed his paw over my hand where it rested on the rose branches. His claws were careful. His touch was warm despite the rain. I know it's terrifying, I continued. I spent years building walls too, protecting myself from more rejection, more proof of my worthlessness. But then I came here, and you. I squeezed his paw gently. You made it safe to be myself. To be intelligent and strategic and ambitious without apology. You gave me space to be strong. I met his eyes. Let me give you space to be vulnerable. To need help. To admit you're lonely and scared. And tired of pretending you're not. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then Ryan pulled his paw back and wrote in the wet earth. His claw movements jerky with emotion. I'm so tired of being alone. The words hung between us, raw and honest. 5 years of isolation, condensed into 6 words, scratched in mud. You're not alone anymore, I said firmly. I'm here. For the next 5 weeks at minimum. And longer. If we can break this curse. And even if the council tries to remove me, I'll fight them. I promise. He made a sound, something between a whimper and a growl, and suddenly his massive head was pressed against my chest, his whole body shaking. I wrapped my arms around him as much as I could, holding him while he trembled. The rain soaked us both, but neither of us moved. He needed to let someone see his pain, his exhaustion, his desperate loneliness. I've got you, I murmured. It's okay. You're okay. His shaking gradually subsided. When he finally pulled back, I saw wetness on his fur that wasn't just rain. Better? I asked. He nodded, looking embarrassed. Don't be ashamed, I said. Crying doesn't make you weak. It makes you honest. And honestly, I think it took more courage to let me see that than it would have to keep pretending you're fine. He touched my face gently with one claw, almost like wiping away a tear, though I hadn't realized I was crying too. We're a mess, I said with a watery laugh. 2 broken people crying in the rain over tangled roses. Very dramatic. He huffed definitely laughter and gestured at the garden around us, with an expression that clearly said fitting. "Come on," I said, standing and offering him my hand. "Let's get warm and dry. We can work more on this later." He took my hand carefully, and we walked back through the garden together. His massive form somehow less intimidating now. More real, solid, present. We dried off in the kitchen, Ryan shaking water from his fur in a way that reminded me he was still part wolf, curse or not. I made hot tea while he stoked the fire, and we settled into our familiar positions, me at the table, him near the hearth. "Truth game," I said. "My turn." "Something I've never told anyone." He tilted his head, attentive. "I'm terrified of being happy," I said quietly. "Every time something good happens, I wait for it to be taken away. Scott courting me, my mother's brief recovery before she died, the one time my father said he was proud of me. Good things don't last in my experience, so I've learned not to trust them." Ryan moved closer, his expression concerned. "Being here with you," I continued. "It's good. Better than I expected. You make me feel seen and valued and capable, and that terrifies me because I know it's temporary. 5 weeks, maybe less. Then either the curse breaks and you won't need me anymore, or the council removes me, or something else goes wrong because good things always do." He wrote urgently, "Not temporary, not leaving you behind." "You can't promise that," I said. "You don't know what happens after the curse breaks. Maybe you'll return to being the isolated king you were before. Maybe you'll need to focus on rebuilding your kingdom. Maybe—" He cut me off by placing both paws on either side of my face. Gentle, careful, but firm. Then he pressed his forehead to mine, his eyes boring into me with fierce intensity. "Not leaving you." The certainty in his gaze made my breath catch. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay." He pulled back but kept one paw on my shoulder, grounding, reassuring. "Your turn," I said after a moment. "One truth," he wrote, his claw movements slow and deliberate. "I think I was always lonely. Even before curse. I just didn't know what I was missing." My chest ached for him. "And now you know?" "Now I know, because of you." We looked at each other across the kitchen, rain still pattering against windows, fire crackling in the hearth. Something was building between us, not romance necessarily, but something deeper. A bond forged from mutual understanding, shared vulnerability, genuine connection. This was what the curse required, this moment, this trust. "I don't want this to be temporary either," I admitted. "I don't know what that means or how it works, but I need you to know. You've become important to me. Not as a mission or a contract or a means to an end. As a person, as a friend." "Friend," he wrote, then paused and added, "And more? Maybe," I said honestly. "I don't know what more looks like when one of us is cursed into beast form. But I'm willing to find out if you are." He touched my hand gently. Willing. We spent the afternoon in the library, reading companionably in parallel. Ryan had given me a book on ancient Omega magic, something I'd never had access to before, as most packs considered it too dangerous for Omegas to study their own power. "This is fascinating," I said, looking up from a chapter on Omega bonds. "It says Omegas used to be mediators, peace weavers. We could sense emotional currents and help resolve conflicts before they escalated." Ryan looked up from his own book, interested. But as pack structures became more hierarchical, Omega abilities got reframed as weakness. Too emotional instead of emotionally intelligent. Too soft instead of capable of gentleness and strength. We went from powerful to powerless because our power threatened the prox alpha dominant system. I read further. Some Omegas could even break curses through emotional bonds, by truly understanding the cursed individual and helping them understand themselves. I looked up at him. "That's what we're doing, isn't it? Building the bond that breaks your curse?" He nodded, his eyes intent. "Which means the council isn't just keeping you cursed for political power. They're also suppressing Omega abilities, proving that Omegas are disposable, fragile, incapable of the magic we used to wield." I felt anger rising. "They're using your curse to reinforce their entire power structure." Ryan growled agreement, his tail lashing. "When we break this curse," I said, "we're not just freeing you, we're proving that Omegas still have power. That we're not weak or disposable or less than. We're showing that the old ways connection, emotional intelligence, bonds built on trust, are stronger than their hierarchy." "Yes," he wrote emphatically. "Show them, prove them wrong. Together," I said. "Together." That night, I sang to him again, Not the full 7 verses, just the final one, the verse about the Omega who refused to kneel. Ryan listened with his eyes closed, his breathing deep and even. When I finished, he opened his eyes and wrote, "That's you." "That's us," I corrected. "You're learning to accept help. I'm learning to trust that good things can last. We're both refusing to kneel to the expectations that trapped us." He moved closer, settling beside my chair. After a moment's hesitation, I reached out and rested my hand on his head, scratching gently behind his ears the way I'd learned he liked. His purr started immediately, that deep, resonant sound that vibrated through his whole body. "We're going to figure this out," I told him. "The curse, the council, all of it. Because you're not alone anymore, and neither am I." He pressed closer, his warmth solid and real against my side. Outside, the rain had stopped. Through the library windows, I could see stars emerging between clouds, bright points in the darkness. 4 weeks left. 4 weeks to deepen our bond, gather evidence against the council, and break a curse that had held for 5 years. It should have felt impossible. Instead, it felt inevitable. The Omega who refused to kneel, and the King who was learning to be vulnerable. We were going to change everything. Chapter 6. The Library Confession. 3 weeks passed in a rhythm of gardens and chess games, cooking and conversation, gradual trust deepening into something neither of us had words for. Ryan taught me the garden's secrets, which roses bloomed earliest, which herbs needed shade, how to prune without damaging next season's growth. I taught him that vulnerability wasn't weakness, that asking for help was courage, that being needed didn't diminish his strength. We played chess every evening. Our skill levels had equalized as I learned his strategies and he learned to read my tells. The games became less about winning, and more about the conversation that happened around them, truths traded like captured pieces, honesty the real victory condition. I told him about my mother's death when I was 15, how she'd been the only one who believed my defects weren't failures, how losing her meant losing the only person who saw value in me. He told me through laborious scratching in the ash about the pressure of inheriting a crown at 12, how the council had molded him into their perfect puppet king, how he'd built walls so high he'd forgotten what connection felt like. The gardens slowly emerged from their wild state. The roses bloomed white and red and pink, their fragrance filling the air. We worked side by side, clearing paths, repairing trellises, coaxing beauty back from neglect. And through it all, something grew between us. Stronger than friendship, deeper than alliance, a bond I felt in my chest when he entered a room, in the way my body relaxed when he was near, in how his absence created an ache I'd never experienced before. But we never named it, never pushed beyond the careful boundaries we'd established. He was cursed. I was temporary. Naming what we felt would only make the inevitable separation harder. Then, on the 21st night, everything changed. I'd been searching the library for books on council procedures, looking for evidence of their manipulation, documentation of previous Omega visits that might prove their pattern of interference. Ryan was with me, helping reach the highest shelves with his considerable height advantage. "There should be official records," I said, scanning spines. "Correspondence about Omega selections. Extraction orders. Something that shows." My hand brushed against a book that felt different. Warmer. I pulled it out and gasped. It was a journal. Leather-bound, with Ryan's family crest embossed on the cover. "Is this yours?" I asked, holding it up. He went completely still. Then slowly, reluctantly, nodded. "From before the curse?" Another nod. His ears flattened, and he looked away. "May I read it?" For a long moment, he didn't respond. Then, with clear reluctance, he gestured permission. I opened to the first page. The handwriting was neat, controlled, so different from the desperate scratches he used now to communicate. "Day of coronation. I am 21 today. A king in truth, no longer just in name. The council fought me on every reform I proposed during the ceremony planning. They want a puppet. I intend to show them otherwise." I flipped forward, scanning entries. The council blocked my proposal to restructure Omega rights, called it radical and dangerous. Elder Doyle suggested I focus on finding a mate instead, as if producing heirs is more important than justice. Further still, I've been reviewing the old texts. Before the council system, packs operated differently. Alphas and Omegas shared power, each bringing different strengths. What happened? When did we become this broken? You were trying to change things, I said softly. Even then, Ryan made a sound, bitter agreement. I kept reading, watching his frustration grow across the pages. Proposals rejected, ideas dismissed. A young king increasingly isolated by advisors who wanted control, not change. Then I reached the final entry. Coronation Day. They don't see me. Any of them. They see a crown. A bloodline. A tool for maintaining their power structure. Elder Doyle actually said I should embrace my alpha nature and stop thinking like an omega, as if intelligence and compassion are weaknesses, as if strength means never needing anyone. Fine. If they want an alpha who needs no one, I'll give them exactly that. I'll rule alone. I'll prove I don't need their counsel, their approval, their support. I'll show them that one strong king is worth more than their entire corrupt system. I will need nothing and no one. I will be untouchable. The handwriting ended there. In the margin, added later in a shakier script. I was such a fool. I closed the journal carefully, my hands trembling. The curse triggered because you decided to embrace isolation. To prove you needed no one. Ryan's entire body sagged. He nodded miserably. And the universe or the magic, or whatever governs these things, gave you exactly what you asked for. A form that guaranteed you'd be alone. That made needing others inevitable while making connection nearly impossible. He covered his face with his paws, a gesture so human it made my chest ache. Ryan, I said gently, look at me. He didn't move. Please. Slowly, he lowered his paws. His amber eyes were devastated. You were 21, I said firmly. Angry and frustrated, and backed into a corner by people who should have supported you. You made a mistake. A big one, yes, but an understandable one. He shook his head violently and began scratching in the floor. Destroyed everything. My fault. All my fault. The curse is your fault, I agreed. Your pride, your defensive isolation that triggered it. But what happened after? The council using your curse for power? Sending omegas they knew would fail? Removing the ones who might succeed? That's on them, not you. Still my fault they had the opportunity. Maybe, I said. But you've spent 5 years paying for that mistake. 5 years trapped and alone and desperate. At what point does the punishment become excessive? He looked at me with something like hope. You've learned the lesson, I continued. You know now that isolation isn't strength. That needing others doesn't make you weak. That vulnerability and power aren't opposites. I moved closer. You've changed, Ryan. The king who wrote that final entry wouldn't have brought me breakfast. Wouldn't have played chess with me. Wouldn't have let me see him cry in the rain. But what if I change back? He wrote desperately. When curse breaks, what if I become him again? You won't, I said with absolute certainty. How do you know? Because that king was alone, and you're not alone anymore. I reached out and took his massive paw in both my hands. You have me. And even after the curse breaks, even after I leave this castle, if I leave you'll remember what this feels like. Connection, trust, being known and accepted anyway. He stared at our joined hands, his breathing uneven. The curse made you need people, I said softly. But I'm going to make sure you want them. That you choose connection not because magic forces you to, but because it makes life worth living. Kendra. He wrote with his free paw, the letters shaky. I need to tell you something. Okay. The bond. Between us. I think it's more than friendship. My heart stuttered. I know. His eyes widened. You know? I've known for a while, I admitted. I feel it too. Like you're a magnet, and I'm iron filings, constantly pulled toward you. Like there's a string tied around my ribs that connects to yours. Why didn't you say anything? Because I'm terrified, I said honestly. Every good thing in my life has been taken away. And you're Ryan. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me. Which means losing you will destroy me. He pulled me closer, wrapping his other arm around me carefully. Not losing me. You keep saying that. But what happens when the curse breaks? You'll be king again. You'll have responsibilities, political obligations, a kingdom to rebuild. And I'll be. I swallowed hard. I'll be a defective omega with no place in that world. He pulled back enough to look at me, then began scratching urgently. You think I care about that? About defects or omega politics or what's proper? The council will care. Your people will care. Let them. He scratched the words so hard they gouged deep into the floor. You think after 5 years of being a monster I'm worried about propriety? But he pressed a claw gently to my lips, silencing me. Then he wrote, each letter careful and deliberate. I love you. The world stopped. Ryan, I love your intelligence. Your strength. Your refusal to be what others expect. I love how you see me, really see me, and stay anyway. I love your terrible singing, and your ruthless chess strategy, and the way you make me believe I can be better. Tears streamed down my face. I can't, I don't. You don't have to say it back. His claw was infinitely gentle, wiping my tears. I just needed you to know. Whatever happens, curse breaks or not, council interferes or not, I love you. That's real. That's true. You're an idiot, I said, laughing and crying simultaneously. A beautiful, frustrating idiot. His ears perked up. Beautiful? Yes, beautiful. Even like this. Especially like this, because this version of you is honest and vulnerable and real. I cupped his massive face in my hands. And I love you too. I've been trying not to, trying to protect myself, but I love you anyway. You impossible, broken, perfect disaster of a king. He made a sound, joy and relief, and something primal, and pressed his forehead to mine. We stayed like that, breathing together, the confession hanging between us like magic. The bond I'd felt for weeks suddenly had a name, and naming it made it more powerful, more real, more terrifying. What do we do now? I whispered. We break the curse. Together. And after, we figure it out. Together. He pulled back to look at me. I meant it. You're not temporary. You're forever. Forever is a long time. Not long enough. I laughed. The sound watery but genuine. You're going to make a terrible king. Far too sentimental. Good. The world has enough cold kings. It needs more who know how to love. The council will hate it. Let them. His eyes blazed with determination. They've controlled me long enough. Time to show them what a real king looks like. And what does a real king look like? He wrote. One who chooses connection over power. Vulnerability over invincibility. Love over loneliness. The antithesis of everything they taught you. Exactly. I kissed his forehead, the only part of him I could reach easily, and felt him shudder. We have 2 weeks left before they try to remove me. I said, we need to break this curse and gather evidence against them. Can you think of anywhere they might have kept records? Correspondence about the previous Omegas? Ryan's eyes sharpened. He nodded and gestured for me to follow. He led me to a part of the castle I hadn't explored, the old administrative wing. Dust coated everything, and the air smelled stale, but Ryan navigated it with purpose, stopping at a door sealed with magical locks. Council chamber, he wrote. Haven't been able to open it, magic keyed to human hands. But I can open it, I realized. He nodded. I placed my palm on the door. The locks shimmered, recognizing Omega magic, and clicked open. Inside was exactly what we needed. Files, correspondence, official records. Years of documentation. This is going to take all night, I said, looking at the volume. I'll help, Ryan wrote. You read. I'll organize. We worked through the night, Ryan moving documents into sorted piles while I read and took notes. What I found made my blood boil. Letters from the council discussing suitable Omega candidates, always choosing either fragile personalities or those too valuable to risk losing. Extraction orders timed suspiciously early. Notes about maintaining the arrangement and ensuring continued council authority. And most damning, a letter from Elder Doyle to the others, dated 3 years ago. We must be cautious. The Beast King shows signs of learning the curse condition. He responds to the Omegas with increasing gentleness. If we send one intelligent enough to recognize this pattern, they might complete the bond before we can intervene. Recommend selecting only traditional, submissive Omegas going forward. Intelligence in Omegas is dangerous to our goals. I showed Ryan the letter. His growl shook the room. They knew, I said. They've known for years how to break your curse, and they've been actively preventing it. Treason, he wrote, his claw movements sharp with rage. Yes. And we can prove it now. I gathered the most damning documents. When the curse breaks, we present this evidence. They can't maintain power if everyone knows they deliberately kept their king imprisoned. When it breaks. Not if. When. I agreed, though fear still lingered. But how? The song revealed the condition: genuine connection built on vulnerability. We have that now. We've said we love each other. What else do we need? Ryan studied me for a long moment, then wrote, "The song says, both were freed. Not just me. You too. What do I need to be freed from? Believing you're not enough. Believing good things don't last. Believing you're disposable." I stared at him. That's not part of your curse. No. But it's part of yours. He touched my face gently. The magic knows. For this to work, we both have to be free. You have to believe you deserve this. Deserve me. Deserve forever. My chest tightened. I'm trying. I know. And I'll keep proving it until you do. Dawn light was filtering through the windows. We'd spent the entire night in the council chamber, but instead of exhaustion, I felt energized. Purposeful. 2 weeks, I said. 2 weeks to break your curse and mine. To free us both and burn down their corrupt system. Together, Ryan wrote. Together, I agreed. He pulled me close, and I wrapped my arms around him as much as I could. He was massive and warm and mine. And for the first time in my life, I let myself believe that good things could last, that I could be enough, that forever was possible. The Omega who refused to kneel and the King who learned to love. We were going to rewrite every rule they'd tried to bind us with. Chapter 7. The Separation. I woke to silence. Not the comfortable quiet of Ryan reading in the library or working in the gardens. A wrong silence. An absence that felt like a wound. I bolted upright, my heart hammering. Ryan? Nothing. I threw on clothes and ran through the castle, checking every room we'd made ours over the past weeks. The library empty, the kitchen cold, no fire lit. The garden still, no massive shadow moving through morning mist. Panic clawed at my throat. Ryan. A paper on the entrance hall floor caught my eye. Official council seal. My hands shook as I picked it up. By order of the Council of Elders, the Omega Kendra Osborne's contract is hereby terminated effective immediately. The experiment has failed. Extraction will occur at noon. Any resistance will result in forfeiture of agreed compensation. Additionally, Alpha King Ryan Austin has been transferred to secure location for his own protection and the safety of the kingdom. No further Omega placements will be attempted. The paper crumpled in my fist. They'd taken him. Somehow, overnight, they'd broken into the castle and taken him. But how? The castle had protections, magic that should have alerted us. Unless someone had inside access. Unless the castle itself had been compromised from the beginning. I ran back to the council chamber where we'd found the evidence. The door stood open. The files we'd so carefully organized were gone. Every piece of documentation, every damning letter vanished. Of course. They'd known we found their records, had probably been monitoring us somehow, and they'd acted before we could use the evidence against them. A sound from outside, hoofbeats and carriage wheels. They were coming. I had maybe 10 minutes. My mind raced through options. I could run, take nothing, disappear into the forest, start over somewhere the council's power didn't reach. But that meant abandoning Ryan, letting them win, accepting that Omegas were disposable after all. Or I could stay and fight. The Omega who refused to kneel. I grabbed every book I could carry from the library, the ones on Omega magic, curse-breaking, ancient pact structures. Stuffed them in a bag along with my notes, Ryan's journal, anything that might help. If they'd destroyed the physical evidence, I'd rebuild the case from magical theory, prove what they'd done through the curse mechanics themselves. The front doors burst open. Elder Doyle strode in with 4 guards, his expression triumphant. "Miss Osborne, your time here is complete. My contract specified 1 year," I said coldly. "It's been 5 weeks. The contract also specified that you would serve as companion to the king. The king has been relocated. Therefore, your services are no longer required." His smile was vicious. "You should be grateful. Most Omegas don't survive this long. Where is he? That's not your concern. Where is he? Somewhere you cannot reach him." Doyle gestured to the guards. "Escort Miss Osborne to the carriage. Use force if necessary." The guards moved toward me. I stood my ground, mind calculating odds. 4 trained fighters versus 1 Omega who'd never shifted. In a physical fight, I'd lose. But I'd learned from Ryan. Strength came in many forms. "Before I go," I said, "there's something you should know." Doyle's eyes narrowed. "Nothing you say will change. The curse condition. I know what it is, and I know you've been preventing it from being fulfilled for 5 years. His face went carefully blank. Ridiculous. Genuine connection built on mutual vulnerability. That's what breaks it. Every Omega who got close to achieving that with Ryan was removed before completion. You've been deliberately keeping your king cursed to maintain your own power. I smiled coldly. That's treason. Prove it. I can. The evidence is hidden where you'll never find it. A lie, but a necessary one. And if anything happens to me or Ryan, instructions have been left to reveal everything to the other packs. Another lie. But Doyle didn't know that. His jaw clenched. You're bluffing. Am I? You know I spent weeks in the archives before coming here. You know I had access to the council chamber. Are you willing to bet your entire power structure that I didn't make copies? That I didn't send information to allies you don't know about? Doubt flickered across his face. Good. Here's my counteroffer, I said. You give me 1 week. 1 week with Ryan uninterrupted. If I can't break the curse in that time, I leave willingly, and you never hear from me again. But if I succeed when I succeed, the truth comes out. All of it. Unacceptable. Then I start talking now. I wonder what the other packs would think about a council that deliberately imprisoned their king for political gain, especially when I can prove it with curse mechanics and magical theory, even without the physical documents. Doyle's eyes blazed with fury, but I saw the calculation behind it. He was weighing risks, consequences. 3 days, he said finally. You have 3 days with the king. After that, you leave regardless of outcome. And you sign a magical binding that prevents you from speaking about any of this to anyone ever. 3 days. It wasn't enough, but it was something. Deal, I said. But I have a condition. You don't monitor us. No magical surveillance. No guards listening at doors. Complete privacy. How do I know you won't flee? Because unlike you, I keep my word. I met his eyes. And because I love him, which means I'm not leaving without trying everything. Something almost like respect flickered across Doyle's face. 3 days, starting now. He pulled out a contract, already prepared. Sign. I read it carefully. The terms were exactly as stated. 3 days with Ryan. Complete privacy. Followed by my departure and magical binding regardless of whether the curse broke. The binding would seal my memories of the curse conspiracy, making them inaccessible even to me. It was a trap. Even if I broke Ryan's curse, I'd forget the evidence needed to prove the council's treason. They'd claim credit for finally finding the right Omega. Ryan would be freed but without knowledge of their manipulation, and I'd be silenced forever. But 3 days was 3 days. And I'd learned to be strategic. I signed. Magic flared, sealing the contract. Doyle smiled coldly. The beast is being held in the Western Tower. You have until sunset 3 days from now. After that you will never see him again. Understood. He gestured to the guards. Take her to the tower. Then seal the entrance. No one in or out until time expires. They left me at the tower door with my bag of books, and nothing else. The moment I entered, magical locks clicked into place behind me. No way out now except forward. Ryan? I called, climbing the spiral stairs. A howl answered, anguished, desperate. I ran. The tower room was circular, bare stone, with heavy chains bolted to the walls. Ryan was bound with enchanted restraints, the magic glowing faintly around his wrists and ankles. He'd clearly been fighting them. The stone around the bolts was cracked and gouged. When he saw me, he made a sound that broke my heart. I'm here, I said, dropping my bag and running to him. I'm here. Let me. I tried to touch the restraints, and magic shocked me, throwing me backward. Ryan roared, straining against the chains. It's okay, I said, forcing myself to stand despite the pain. I'm fine. Don't hurt yourself. He stopped struggling, his amber eyes devastated. There were new wounds on him, cuts and burns from fighting the guards, exhaustion in every line of his massive body. They're afraid, I told him. Afraid of what we discovered. Afraid of what we're building together. So they're trying to break us before we can break your curse. He huffed bitterly, succeeding. No, I said firmly. They gave me 3 days. 3 days with you, alone, to try breaking the curse. They think it's not enough time. They're wrong. His ears pricked forward. Hope warred with doubt in his expression. We already have everything we need, I continued. moving closer but not touching. The chain's magic was clearly set to harm anyone who tried to free him. The bond is real. The love is real. We've both learned our lessons, you about vulnerability, me about, I swallowed hard, about deserving good things. Do you, he wrote with one restrained claw against the stone floor, believe you deserve this? I'm trying to. Not enough. You have to know. Then help me know, I said desperately. We have 3 days. Teach me how to believe I'm enough. He looked at me for a long moment, then wrote, sit, talk, tell me everything you think makes you not enough. That could take hours. We have 3 days. Start talking. I sat against the wall opposite him and began. I told him about every rejection, every disappointment, every moment someone had looked at me with disgust or pity, my father's constant criticism, Scott's betrayal, Martha's casual cruelty disguised as concern, the pack members who'd whispered defective loud enough for me to hear, the healers who'd confirmed I'd never bear children with apologetic faces that said you're broken. Ryan listened to all of it, his eyes never leaving mine. When I cried, he made soft sounds of comfort. When I raged, he growled agreement, and slowly, over hours of talking, I realized something. You're not arguing with me, I said. You're not telling me I'm wrong about being defective. No, he wrote. Because you're right. I blinked. What? You are defective. So am I. We're both broken. He held my gaze steadily. But broken isn't the same as worthless. I don't understand. You can't shift. I'm trapped as a beast. Those are facts. His claw moved carefully. But facts aren't values. Being different doesn't mean being less. Society says. Society is wrong. He scratched harder, emphatic. Society said I should rule alone. That needing others was weakness. Society was wrong about me too. I stared at him. You're saying my defects don't matter? I'm saying your defects are part of you, not all of you, not even the most important parts. He gestured at me with his restrained paw. You're intelligent, strategic, brave, compassionate. You see people clearly. You fight for what's right. You refuse to kneel. Those things don't cancel out being unable to shift or have children. No, but they matter more. His eyes burned with intensity. Kendra, I don't love you despite your defects. I love you including them. All of you. Every part. My breath caught. How? Because love isn't about perfection. It's about seeing someone fully and choosing them anyway. He shifted. The chains clinking. You see me as a beast and love me. I see you as defective and love you. We both choose the reality over the fantasy. But what if? No. He cut me off. No more what ifs. I've spent 5 years in what ifs. What if the curse breaks? What if it doesn't? What if I'm alone forever? What ifs are torture? Then what do we focus on? What is? He wrote the words slowly, deliberately. What is? I love you. What is? You love me. What is? We have 3 days. What is? We're going to try. I felt something shift in my chest. A letting go of fear, of protective walls, of the constant bracing for disappointment. What is? I repeated softly. Not what might be or what should be. What actually is. Yes. I stood and moved to him, ignoring the warning tingle of the restraint magic. What is? You're chained. What is? I'm going to figure out how to free you, even if it takes all 3 days. He touched my face carefully with one claw, the chains limiting his movement. What is? We're not alone anymore. What is? We're going to break this curse. What is, even if we don't? It was worth it. I kissed his muzzle gently, and he made that deep purring sound I'd come to love. It was worth it. I agreed. But we're still going to succeed. How? I don't know yet. I pulled out my books, settling close to him. But I have 3 days. Omega magic I'm finally willing to explore. An absolute certainty that the universe owes us a win, after everything we've survived. His purr deepened. That's my Omega. And you're my king, I said. Monster or man, cursed or free. Mine. Yours. He agreed. I opened the first book on Omega magic and began to read, while Ryan watched with those impossible amber eyes, and outside the tower time counted down toward a deadline that felt both too close and somehow inevitable. 3 days to break 2 curses, his transformation, my certainty of unworthiness. We'd need every minute. Chapter 8. The Breaking. Day 1 in the tower passed in frustration. I read every book I'd brought, searching for loopholes in curse mechanics, ways to accelerate bond formation, anything that might help. The restraints on Ryan prevented physical contact beyond brief touches that left me shocked and aching. The magical bindings were specifically designed to prevent curse breaking, another layer of the Council's sabotage. "They've thought of everything," I said, as evening approached, rubbing my burnt fingertips from my latest attempt to touch the chains. "The restraints prevent the physical closeness that might deepen our bond. The isolation prevents outside help. The time limit prevents patience." Ryan wrote in the dust. "They're afraid of us. They should be." I stared at the chains, thinking, these restraints, they're keyed to prevent curse-breaking contact specifically. "But what if we don't need physical touch?" Explained. "The bond between us, I feel it here." I pressed my hand to my chest. Not in my hands or my body. In something deeper. The magic recognizes emotional connection, not just physical proximity. His ears pricked forward. "The song talks about seeing beyond what eyes alone can show. About love meaning standing tall. About both of us being freed." I paced, ideas clicking together. "Every Omega before me tried to break your curse by serving you, comforting you, being what they thought you needed. Traditional Omega behavior. Yes. But that's not what breaks it. The curse doesn't want submission, it wants equality, partnership. Two whole people choosing each other, not one person fixing the other." I stopped pacing, looking at him directly. "I can't break your curse, Ryan. Only you can do that. By truly accepting vulnerability. And you can't break mine, only I can do that, by truly believing I'm worthy. So how do we help each other? We witness it. We reflect back what the other person can't see yet." I moved closer, ignoring the warning tingle from the restraints. "You show me my worth until I believe it. I show you that vulnerability is strength until you embody it. 3 days isn't enough time. It is if we're honest. Completely, brutally honest. No more protecting each other from hard truths. No more gentle deflection. Just raw truth, even when it hurts." His expression became wary. "I'll start," I said. "Hard truth. I'm terrified that even if we break your curse, you'll realize you only loved me because I was the only option. That in the real world, with real choices, you'd choose someone else, someone perfect." Ryan flinched like I'd struck him. "Your turn," I said. "Hard truth, tell me what you're afraid of." He hesitated, then wrote slowly. "I'm afraid I'll become the isolated king again. That without the curse forcing me to need you, I'll rebuild my walls. That I'll hurt you by going back to who I was." The words hung between us, painful and real. "Thank you," I said quietly, "for trusting me with that. It might be true. It might be. But here's another truth. People can change. You're not the same king who triggered the curse. 5 years of forced vulnerability taught you things walls never could. And I'm here to remind you when you forget. And if you're right, if I only love you because you were here, then we'll discover that together. And it'll hurt, but we'll survive it. Because we're both stronger than we think." I sat down, leaning against the wall near him. "But I don't think that's true. I think you love me because I see you. Really see you. And that's not circumstantial, that's who I am." He made a soft sound agreement. "Hope. Another truth," I said. "I'm angry at you." His head snapped up. Surprised. "You had everything I wanted: education, power, respect, and you isolated yourself with it. You had choices I never got. And you chose walls." I met his eyes. "Part of me resents that. Part of me thinks you deserve this curse, because you had what I dreamed of and squandered it." Pain flickered across his face, but he nodded slowly. "And another truth," I continued. "That anger is unfair. You were 21 and manipulated by people who should have protected you. You made mistakes from a position of privilege, yes, but they were still mistakes born from pain. You didn't deserve 5 years of torture any more than I deserve 23 years of being called defective. Thank you," he wrote. "For being angry. For being honest. Your turn. Tell me something hard." He wrote for a long time, his claw movements careful. "I watched you sleep sometimes. Those first weeks. I told myself I was protecting you, but really I was memorizing you. The way you breathed. How you frowned in your sleep. I knew it was wrong. Invasive. But I couldn't stop. You were the first real thing in 5 years. That should probably disturb me," I said. "But it doesn't. It makes me sad for you. 5 years so starved for connection that watching someone sleep felt like intimacy. It was wrong." It was human. Or as human as you could be. Trapped like this. I smiled sadly. And honestly, I pretended to sleep longer than necessary sometimes, because I liked knowing you were there, that I wasn't alone. His ears lifted. Really? Really, we're both disasters, Ryan. Broken people doing our best with what we have. Broken people who love each other. Yes, I agreed. And maybe that's enough. Maybe love doesn't require perfection, just honesty and choice, and showing up even when it's hard. He reached toward me, chains clinking, and I met him halfway. The restraint magic shocked us both, but we held the contact, his claw on my hand, pain arcing between us, neither of us letting go. I choose you, I said through gritted teeth. Cursed or free, monster or king. I choose you. I choose you. He scratched with his other claw, his body shaking from the magical feedback. Defective, or perfect. Omega, or anything else. I choose you. The magic flared brighter, angry at our defiance. My hand burned. His claw bled where it touched my skin. But neither of us moved. This is what they didn't understand, I said, my voice shaking. The curse wants vulnerability. Yes. But not passive acceptance. Active choice. Choosing connection even when it hurts. Even when it's dangerous. Even when it would be easier to let go. The restraints glowed white-hot. Ryan roared in pain but held on. The Omega, who refused to kneel, I gasped. Taught him that love means standing tall. We're both standing, Ryan. Even chained. Even cursed. We're still choosing each other. Something cracked, not physical but magical. A fracture in the curse's structure. A hairline split in 5 years of bindings. Then the magic backlash hit us both, and everything went black. I woke to silence again. But this time, different. Expectant rather than empty. My hand ached. When I looked, I saw a burn mark where Ryan's claw had touched me, but shaped like a star, symmetrical and deliberate. A magical mark. Ryan. Movement in the shadows. But smaller than before. Human-sized. A man stepped into the dim light filtering through the tower window. He was tall, lean, with amber eyes that I'd know anywhere. Dark hair that fell past his shoulders, sharp features, and scars visible on his arms where the restraints had cut him. He wore the tattered remains of clothing that had clearly been destroyed by years of transformations. But he was human. Completely, unmistakably human. Kendra, he said, and his voice was rough from disuse but clear. Words. Actual spoken words. I stood on shaking legs. The curse. Broken. He touched his throat wonderingly. I can speak. I can. His voice cracked. I'm human. We stared at each other across the small space. After weeks of chess games and garden work and careful touches, this should have been triumphant. Instead, it felt terrifying. This was real Ryan. Not beast form Ryan I'd learned to love. Real him. With real choices. In the real world. Say something, he said quietly. You're shorter than I expected. He barked a laugh, the first I'd heard from him in human form. I'm 6'4", that's not short. You were 9 feet tall as a beast, it's relative. I wrapped my arms around myself. This is strange. Very strange. He took a tentative step forward. I know what you're thinking. Do you? You're wondering if I'll still want you now that I have options. Now that I'm not trapped. I flinched. He did know. And I'm wondering if you'll still want me now that I'm not a tragic beast who needs saving, he continued. If the reality of me, just a man who made terrible mistakes, is less appealing than the curse-broken romance. That's not, isn't it? He moved closer. We fell in love under extraordinary circumstances. You needed purpose. I needed connection. What if that's all this was? Survival and convenience? The words hurt, but they were also honest. The brutal honesty we'd promised each other. What if it was? I asked. Then we figure it out now. In the real world. With real choices. He stopped a few feet away. I'm not bound anymore, Kendra. Not by curse. Not by chains. Not by circumstance. I could walk away. So could you. Is that what you want? No. His voice was fierce. I want you. Still. Always. But I need to know you want me too. Not the beast. Not the tragedy. Me. Just me. I looked at him, really looked. At the amber eyes that were the same whether beast or man. at the scars on his arms from fighting restraints to protect me, at the way he held himself carefully, giving me space to choose. He was the man who'd brought me breakfast, who'd played chess with me, who'd shown me his garden, who'd written "I love you" in ash and meant it. Beast or human didn't matter. This was Ryan. "I want you," I said. "Just you. Not the curse or the tragedy or any of it. You, with your walls you're learning to lower, your mistakes you're trying to fix, your capacity for love you're learning to trust." Something in his expression cracked open. "You're sure?" "I'm terrified. But yes, I'm sure." He closed the distance between us, and for the first time, we touched without magic shocking us apart. His hands, human hands, careful and warm, cupped my face. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted. "The real world. Relationships without curses forcing them. Being vulnerable without magic demanding it. Neither do I. We'll figure it out together." "Together," he agreed, and kissed me. It was nothing like I'd imagined. Awkward at first. 5 years without kissing anyone would do that. But then we found a rhythm. And it was perfect precisely because it was real. Imperfect. Human. When we pulled apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to mine. We broke both curses, I think. Both? Yours and mine. You're holding me, accepting my touch, believing you deserve this. I realized he was right. The constant voice telling me I wasn't enough had quieted. Not gone, probably never fully gone, but manageable. Because I'd chosen to believe him when he said I was worthy. Chosen to trust that good things could last. "We did it," I whispered. "We actually did it. We did." He pulled back, grinning. "Now we just have to deal with the council." Right. The council. Who still had all the evidence. Who thought they'd silenced us. "They're expecting me to walk out of here defeated," I said. Memory bound and silent. "You freed but without knowledge of their conspiracy. They underestimated us," Ryan said. "Again. We have no proof, they destroyed the documents. But we have testimony. Mine as king, yours as witness. We have the curse mechanics that prove they knew how to break it and prevented it. We have pattern evidence every Omega removed just before success." His eyes glinted. "We have enough to raise questions. Create investigations. Undermine their authority. It's not enough for conviction. No. But it's enough to break their power. Force oversight. Create change." He took my hands. "And we have something else they can't take. Each other. Whatever happens, we face it together." A sound from below, the tower doors unlocking. Our 3 days were up. "Ready?" Ryan asked. I looked at him, no longer a beast, no longer cursed, just a man who'd chosen me and who I'd chosen back, despite everything. Because of everything. "Ready," I said. "Let's show them what happens when Omegas refuse to kneel and kings refuse to be caged." He grinned, fierce and wild. "I've missed my crown. Time to take it back." We descended the tower stairs hand in hand, walking toward whatever came next. Together. Elder Doyle waited at the tower entrance, magical binding contract in hand. His expression was smug right until he saw Ryan in human form, walking freely, with me at his side. The contract fell from his nerveless fingers. "Hello, Elder Doyle," Ryan said pleasantly. "I believe we have much to discuss." Doyle's face went white. "Your Majesty, the curse how is broken. As you can see." Ryan's voice hardened. "Thanks to Omega Kendra Osborne, who succeeded where you ensured all others would fail." "I don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do." I stepped forward. "You knew the curse condition for years. You selected Omegas designed to fail. You removed the ones who got close to success. You kept your king imprisoned for political power. That's you have no proof." "I have testimony," Ryan said. 5 years of observation, patterns of council interference, knowledge of what you did to maintain this arrangement." He smiled coldly. "And I have authority as king to launch a full investigation. Shall we see what we find when we dig deeper?" Doyle's jaw worked. "The council won't stand for this. The council will answer to me. As they always should have." Ryan's voice carried the weight of command I'd never heard from him before. "Starting now. And the binding?" Doyle gestured weakly at the contract on the floor. I picked it up and tore it cleanly in half. Void. I fulfilled the terms, spent 3 days with the king and broke his curse. The binding only activates if I failed. I didn't. Magic flared from the torn contract, confirming my words. Doyle's face purpled with rage. This isn't over, he snarled. You're right, Ryan agreed. It's not. But when it is, you'll be the one who's powerless. Not me. Never me again. He gestured, and guards appeared, real guards, not council-controlled ones. Ryan's personal guard, who'd been waiting for their king to reclaim his throne. Escort Elder Doyle to the council chamber, Ryan commanded. Summon the other elders. It's time for a reckoning. As they led Doyle away, Ryan turned to me, ready for this part. Facing down a corrupt council that's held power for 5 years? Sure, sounds fun. He laughed. That's my Omega. Your Omega, who deserves a place in your court. A position of real power. Access to the royal archives and authority to make changes. Already planning your demands? Always. I squeezed his hand. The Omega who refused to kneel, remember? I'm not stopping now. His eyes blazed with pride and love. I wouldn't want you to. We walked toward the council chamber together, King and Omega, cursed no more, ready to break every corrupt system that had tried to break us. The real work was just beginning, but we'd spent weeks learning how to be honest, how to be vulnerable, how to choose each other even when it was hard. Facing down a council would be easy compared to breaking curses of the heart. And we'd already proven we were very good at breaking what shouldn't be broken. Epilogue. The kingdom remade. 6 months later. The royal archives smelled like old paper and possibility. I stood in my office, with my name on the door in gold lettering. Kendra Austin, Royal Archivist and Omega Advocate, reviewing applications for the new Omega Scholarship Program. 50 candidates this year, all pursuing education in fields previously closed to them. History, law, medicine, magical theory, things I'd only dreamed of at their age. A knock at the door interrupted my reading. Come in. Ryan entered carrying 2 cups of tea and looking distinctly uncomfortable in his formal council robes. I have 15 minutes before the next hearing. Tell me something that isn't politics. I laughed and accepted the tea. Alma Yoder wrote back. She's accepting the position as deputy archivist. Starts next month. His face lit up. The Omega who lasted 2 months in the castle. The same. Turns out she's brilliant with historical documentation and has very strong opinions about how the council manipulated records. I sipped my tea. She's going to help me build the case for the final hearings. 6 months of investigations had revealed exactly what we'd suspected. Years of deliberate interference, falsified reports, and political manipulation. 3 elders had already resigned in disgrace. Elder Doyle faced trial for treason next month. But proving it all had required painstaking documentation, witness testimony, and more political maneuvering than I'd ever imagined. Ryan had been patient, methodical, building an airtight case while simultaneously restructuring the entire kingdom's government. He looked exhausted most days, but happy, real. How's the Omega rights legislation coming? He asked, settling into the chair across from my desk. Passed first reading in the Northern Territories. Stalled in the East. Surprise. I pulled out a map marked with colored pins. But we're making progress. 5 territories now recognize Omega property rights. 3 have outlawed forced bonding contracts. And the Western Alliance just appointed their first Omega Council member. Because of you. Because of us. I corrected. You're the one who used your royal authority to force the initial reforms. After you wrote them. And researched them. And argued them so convincingly that even the conservative alphas couldn't find counter-arguments. He smiled. I'm just the pretty face with the crown. You're the actual power. We're partners, I said firmly. That's the whole point. He reached across the desk and took my hand, his thumb tracing the star-shaped scar where his claw had burned me. His own hand bore a matching mark, proof of the curse breaking, permanent reminders of what we'd survived. Partners, he agreed, though the pretty face comment stands. Have you looked at yourself lately? You're radiant. I rolled my eyes, but pleasure warmed my chest. 6 months of being valued, respected, and loved had changed me in visible ways. I stood straighter, smiled more, met challenges with confidence instead of fear. The voice that called me defective still whispered sometimes, but it was drowned out by louder truths. Capable, intelligent, worthy, loved. Speaking of partnerships, Ryan said carefully. The council keeps asking when we're making an official bonding announcement. My hand tensed in his. We'd been avoiding this conversation for weeks. And what do you tell them? I asked. That it's none of their business. That we'll bond when and if we choose. That political pressure is exactly the kind of thing we're trying to eliminate from Omega-Alpha relationships. He paused. But I'm not asking what I tell them. I'm asking what you want. I looked at him, really looked. 6 months of humanity suited him. He'd regained weight, though he'd never quite lost the lean, rangy build the curse had given him. His hair was shorter now, properly trimmed. He wore his crown with growing comfort, though he still preferred working in shirt sleeves when we were private. He was beautiful. But more than that, he was good, kind, committed to change even when it was hard. Still learning to be vulnerable, still working on lowering his walls, but trying every day. And he loved me, publicly, proudly, without reservation. I want to bond with you, I said quietly, but I'm scared. Of what? Of it changing things. Of losing what we have. Of people saying I manipulated you or that you settled. I set down my tea. And of proving them right. What if marriage makes us complacent? What if we stop fighting for each other because we assume we've already won? Ryan came around the desk, pulling me to my feet and into his arms. Do you trust me? Yes. Then trust that I know what I want. That I'm choosing you not because it's easy or expected, but because life with you is better than life without you. He tilted my face up. And trust yourself. You're not capable of complacency. You'll be fighting injustice and questioning systems until your last breath. Marriage won't change that, it'll just mean I get to fight beside you officially. Officially, I repeated, smiling despite myself. With ceremonies and contracts and public declarations that you're mine and I'm yours. He kissed my forehead. Plus, it would really annoy Elder Doyle. Defective Omega becoming queen? He'd be furious. I laughed. That's a terrible reason to get bonded. But effective motivation. You're ridiculous. And you love me anyway. He pulled back, suddenly serious. Kendra, I don't need marriage to know you're my partner. My equal. The person I choose every day. But I want it. I want to stand in front of everyone and make promises that match what I already feel. Is that something you want too? I thought about the girl I'd been 6 months ago, convinced she was worthless, certain good things never lasted, preparing to be disposable. That girl would never have believed this moment was possible. But I wasn't her anymore. Yes, I said. I want to bond with you. Officially. With ceremonies and contracts and public declarations. His smile was incandescent. When, after the trial, after we've proven what the council did and ensured they can't interfere again, after we've secured enough reforms that I know this kingdom is actually changing. I met his eyes. I want to marry you as a free Omega in a free kingdom, not as a political statement, but as a choice. After the trial, he agreed. That gives us 2 months to plan, or to elope and avoid the political circus entirely. You'd hate eloping. You want the whole kingdom watching while you claim your place as queen. Admit it. He was right, and he knew it. I grinned. Fine. Big ceremony. Maximum political statement. Every Omega in attendance to see that we're not disposable anymore. That's my ruthless strategist. He kissed me properly, deep and thorough, until someone cleared their throat from the doorway. We broke apart to find Alma Yoder standing there, looking amused. Sorry to interrupt, but Archivist Osborne has an appointment in 10 minutes. And Your Majesty is late for the council session. Ryan groaned. How did I ever manage before you hired her? You didn't, I said. You were a mess. Still are, actually. She just makes you look organized. Alma grinned. She'd arrived early to help with trial preparations, and had immediately started managing both our schedules with terrifying efficiency. I'd hired her on the spot. Go, I said, pushing Ryan toward the door. Try not to let the remaining elders annoy you into doing something rash. No promises. He paused at the threshold. Dinner tonight? Just us. I'll cook. I'll bring wine, and we can fight about the Eastern Territory's stalling tactics. Romantic, I said dryly. We're political partners first, remember? Romance is just a bonus. He left laughing, and I returned to my desk feeling lighter than I had in weeks. That evening, I found Ryan in the castle kitchens, the same kitchen where we'd shared meals as Beast and Omega, where I'd learned to read his body language, where we'd built the foundation of everything we'd become. He'd taken my statement about cooking literally, and was attempting to make dinner himself. The results were chaotic. Is that supposed to be on fire? I asked, eyeing a pan with actual flames. Probably not. He doused it with water, creating a spectacular sizzle. Okay, I'm terrible at this. You cook. I'll assist. Novel concept, the king as assistant chef. I'm practicing being humble. How am I doing? Terribly. You're still ordering the vegetables around. He looked at the carrots he'd been aggressively chopping. They're not listening. I laughed and took over, relegating him to tasks that couldn't cause fires. We worked in comfortable silence, our movements synchronized from months of practice. I've been thinking about the bonding ceremony, he said as I stirred soup. What if we incorporated traditional Omega elements, the 7-verse song, the hand binding with scarred palms, the vows spoken in both common and the old Omega dialect? I looked at him, surprised. That would be radical. Royal bondings are always alpha traditional. Good. We're radical. He met my eyes. I want everyone to see that Omega culture matters. That it's not lesser or weaker, it's powerful. You're powerful, and I'm honored to be bound to you, in your traditions, not just mine. My throat tightened. You've been researching Omega bonding customs? For 3 months. Alma's been helping. He smiled. Did you know in the old ways? The Omega gave the Alpha a task to prove their worth. Not a test of strength, but of understanding, of seeing beyond surface appearances. Like a curse condition, I realized. Exactly like that. The bonding was itself a breaking through assumptions, breaking down walls, breaking free from expectations. He took my hands. We already did that. The ceremony would just be making it official. I kissed him, tasting possibility and partnership, and a future I was finally letting myself believe in. 7-verse song it is, I said. I'll even sing it properly this time, with witnesses. Your singing has improved. Liar, but I love you for saying it. I love you for trying anyway. For refusing to let deficiency, real or perceived, stop you from anything. We finished cooking together and ate at the rough kitchen table, talking about reforms and trials and bonding ceremonies and the life we were building piece by piece. Outside, the gardens Ryan had planted bloomed in riot of colors, tended now by a full staff of gardeners, but still wild at heart beauty that refused to be perfectly controlled. Like us. Like everything we were creating. The trial, 2 months later. The grand courtroom was packed. Representatives from every territory, alphas and omegas alike, nobles and common folk granted special access. This trial would set precedents, and everyone wanted to witness it. I sat in the front row with Alma beside me, our testimony already given. Ryan presided as king, and judge, the only position with authority to try council members for treason. Elder Doyle stood in chains, his face still defiant despite weeks of damning evidence. The testimony is clear, Ryan said, his voice carrying through the chamber. You and your fellow council members deliberately maintained a curse on your king for political gain. You manipulated Omega selections to ensure failure. You removed Omegas who showed signs of success. You falsified records and suppressed information about curse-breaking mechanics. I did what was necessary. Doyle spat. You were a child playing at kingship. Someone had to maintain order. By imprisoning me? By sacrificing Omegas to maintain your power? Ryan's voice was cold. You didn't maintain order. You corrupted it. Those Omegas knew the risks. They knew nothing. You lied to them and their families, sent them into situations designed to break them while claiming to help. Ryan leaned forward. How many, Elder Doyle, how many Omegas were damaged by your scheme? Silence. Doyle's jaw worked, but he couldn't answer. 14, I said, standing. 14 Omegas sent over 5 years. 3 died officially from accidents, but the timing suggests otherwise. 6 were institutionalized for mental breaks. 5 returned to their packs traumatized and unable to function. And I was the 15th, sent with a contract designed to silence me even if I succeeded. The courtroom erupted in whispers. The numbers, presented plainly, were damning. 14 lives destroyed, Ryan said. For 5 years of corrupt power, for political control you had no right to maintain. He looked at Doyle with something like pity. You taught me that needing others was weakness. You were wrong. The only weakness here is your inability to recognize strength in any form but domination. And what will you do, Your Majesty? Doyle sneered. Execute me? Make me a martyr? No, Ryan said calmly. I'll do what you taught me to fear. I'll show mercy. Exile rather than execution. Stripped of title and power, but alive to see everything you tried to prevent. Omega rights expanding, power structures reforming, the kingdom thriving without your corruption. He stood. Elder Timothy Doyle, you are found guilty of treason, conspiracy, and crimes against Omegas. You are hereby exiled from this kingdom permanently. Your assets are forfeit, to be distributed as reparations to the Omegas and families you harmed. And your name will be recorded in history not as a powerful elder, but as the embodiment of everything we've risen above. Guards led Doyle away, still sputtering protests. But they sounded hollow now. He'd lost, and he knew it. Ryan descended from the throne and came to me. It's done. It's done, I agreed. We walked out together, through a courtroom full of witnesses who'd seen justice served and power checked, and an Omega standing equal beside her king. The real work would continue, reforms to implement, structures to rebuild, minds to change. But we'd proven it was possible. And that was everything. The bonding ceremony, 1 week later. I wore white traditional for Omegas. But the dress was my own design. Practical enough to move in, beautiful enough to make a statement, with embroidered stars marking my shoulders where Ryan's mark lived on my skin. The ceremony took place in the castle gardens, among the roses we'd untangled together. Every Omega in the capital had been invited, along with representatives from territories kingdom-wide. Ryan waited at the garden's heart, wearing formal robes but with his feet bare in the grass Omega tradition, staying connected to earth and growth. When he saw me, his face transformed with joy. Alma walked beside me as witness, not giving me away. I belonged to myself but standing with me, supporting my choice. You look terrified, she whispered. I am terrified. Good. Means it matters. We reached Ryan, and she stepped back. He took my hands, scarred palms against scarred palms. Ready? He asked quietly. Ready. The ceremony Elder A Omega I'd personally selected began the traditional words, but when it came time for vows, we'd written our own. I vow to see you, I said. Not the king, not the curse, not the expectations, but you. Ryan, who loves gardens and terrible chess gambits, and morning bread, who learned that vulnerability is strength, who chooses me every day. I vow to see you, he replied. Not the defects, not the limitations, not the labels, but you. Kendra, who refuses to kneel and rewrites rules and makes me better by demanding I be honest. Who taught me that love means standing tall together. We bound our hands with silk cord marked with both our house symbols, now joined. I vow to stand with you, I continued. In trials and triumphs, in change and challenge. To fight beside you, not for you. To be partner, not property. I vow to stand with you, he echoed. In vulnerability and strength, in mistakes and growth. To support your battles, not fight them for you. To be partner, not protector. The elder nodded, and I began the song. All 7 verses. My voice stronger now, steadier. Ryan joined me on the final verse. His voice rough but true. And when the Wolf King learned to see, beyond what eyes alone could show, he found that strength and tenderness were not opposing forces, no. The Omega who refused to kneel taught him that love means standing tall, and in that lesson, both were freed from pride and fear that bound them all. The crowd was silent. Then someone Alma started clapping. Others joined, until the garden filled with applause and cheers and the sound of change happening in real time. The elder spoke the final words. By tradition old and new, by choice free and clear, I declare you bonded, King and Omega, partners in all things. Ryan kissed me while the crowd roared approval, and I kissed him back, tasting joy and future and everything we'd fought to build. When we broke apart, he whispered, "Thank you." For what? For refusing to kneel, for standing tall, for teaching me that broken doesn't mean worthless, and that love is the strongest magic of all. "Thank you for seeing me," I replied. "For choosing me. For building this kingdom, where Omegas like me can be powerful and defective and worthy all at once." We walked back through the gardens hand in hand, bonded now officially though we'd been bound long before. The celebration would last until dawn, music and dancing and political networking disguised as joy. But for this moment, it was just us. 2 people who'd broken curses and systems and expectations, who'd chosen each other when the world said they shouldn't, who'd proven that the strongest magic was honest connection and mutual choice. The Omega who refused to kneel, and the King who learned to love. We'd changed everything, and we were just getting started. 5 years later, final scene. I found Ryan in the archives, surrounded by papers and looking utterly frustrated. The Eastern Territories are stalling again, he said without preamble. They always do. I set down my bag and joined him at the table. What is it this time? Omega education funding. They claim it's too expensive, that traditional structures work fine, that we're moving too fast. In other words, they're afraid of change, terrified of it. He rubbed his face. Sometimes I wonder if we're actually making progress, or just exhausting ourselves. And I pulled out my own folder research I'd been compiling. We've increased Omega literacy rates by 40% in 5 years, established schools in 12 territories, passed property rights legislation in 8 kingdoms, appointed 17 Omegas to previously Alpha-only positions, created legal frameworks for Omega-initiated bonding dissolution, and inspired reform movements in 6 neighboring nations. He looked at the numbers, then at me. You keep track of all this? Someone has to. You get discouraged and forget what we've accomplished. I smiled. That's my job, reminding you that slow progress is still progress. That changing centuries of oppression takes time. That we're winning even when it doesn't feel like it. He pulled me into his lap. Have I mentioned that I love you? Not since breakfast. You're slipping. I love you. You're brilliant and relentless, and exactly the partner I need to change the world. Just the world? I was aiming for the entire continent. He laughed, and I felt the sound in my chest where our bond lived, that magical connection that had broken his curse and freed us both. It had deepened over the years, until I could feel his emotions like my own, until distance between us created physical ache. Some called it a true mate bond. I called it choice made magic, love made tangible. The Eastern Territories will come around, I said. They always do eventually, and if they don't, we'll find another way. We always do. Together, he said. Together. A knock at the door interrupted us. Alma entered with another stack of applications. 50 more requests for the scholarship program. And the Northern Territories want to schedule a consultation about implementing our Omega advocacy model. See? I told Ryan. Winning. He sighed but smiled. Winning exhaustedly. The best kind. I kissed him and slid off his lap. Come on. We have work to do. Worlds to change. Systems to dismantle. The usual, he agreed, taking my hand. We walked out together, into a kingdom we were still reforming, toward challenges we'd face side by side, carrying the bond we'd forged in darkness into the light. 2 broken people who'd refused to stay that way. 2 cursed souls who'd found freedom in each other. 2 partners changing the world, one hard, one reform at a time. And every single day, we chose each other all over again. That was the real magic, the strongest curse break of all. Love is active choice. Partnership is revolution. Standing tall together, and refusing to kneel to anything that tried to make us less than whole. We'd spent 5 years proving it was possible. We'd spend the rest of our lives showing others how.